Good afternoon, guys. How's everyone doing? I'm doing great, and I'm back with a new series where I'm going to review um, people who don't play mid-stakes cash, playing mid-stakes cash online. So just generally because I basically play most of my poker as a six max online player, and I've studied like this format the whole time. I basically played poker for like 4 years now, just longer than 4 years. So I'd say I'm like at least an intermediate to advanced level player in this, whilst other people who don't typically play mid stakes cash, they could be micro stakes cash players or like tournament players coming to cash games. I kind of like want to look at like how they play, because I've done nothing but win in this format and get better over time. Someone like Lex Veldhouse is like the first guy I'm going to look at because I really enjoy watching his MTT videos, and like I think he's a really good MTT player. That being said, I know he used to play cash games back in the day. He was obviously on high stakes poker, playing for like six-figure sums, some crazy hands like the five deuce off where Phil Ivey 5-bet bluffed jams when he was 4-bet bluffing. Like that hand was like crazy. But yeah, I think he's obviously a good player, but now he's playing 200 Zoom, completely different game now. Different environment. So we're gonna see. I mean, he probably has like 100 big blind strategy. Very well, like just down in this spot, like especially in MTTs. But like the ranges are different, and also the tendencies are probably slightly different in cash to MTTs. I can't speak for that. So I'm gonna watch, and I'm gonna give my thoughts. I also think it's important to like watch other people play, regardless of whether you respect their game or not. And I think I do have respect for Lex's game, but like you could just learn about how other people think about the game, and especially if they're teaching players like Lex's, it's going to pass on that knowledge to like players. And he's the type of player he probably is teaching is probably like a newer poker player or someone trying to transition from MTTs to cash. You probably don't look for Lex when you're trying to learn online cash. You look for actual online cash professionals. Um, so, like, it allows you to like try and understand their thought process a little bit more, and that will like increase your knowledge of like spots. Because when you get to spots against people and you kind of understand how other people think about the game, it's going to help your game and finding exploits. So, like, let's talk about like this when we watch Lex play. So we're going to go with ace queen on the button. I watched this hand already. You notice here he's going to do a pot bet strategy.
A bit big.
And you can actually use multiple sizings on the flop. Again, it doesn't matter. Bigger bet is like better 10, in equilibrium.
Jack 9.
He's going to bet again. Target hands like queen 10, jack 10, jack 9. Personally, if it was me, I would probably overfold the jack 9s on the offsuits on this flop and just like focus on like the backdoor flushes. Of course, I won't have jack 9 suited because that's a pure free bet. Big blind versus button. But like some of these hands that he's talked about, like the queen 10 offs and the things that they're actually are mixed in theory. And I can show you the sim because I have a sim prepared for this hand because it's like a normal board. The only difference is I changed it so he uses pot to the multiple sizes. Now actually a larger c-bet is higher in EV in equilibrium, but that's just the equilibrium. We're not, the player he's playing against probably is definitely not playing equilibrium. Like equilibrium ranges, counter strategies to the pot perfectly. It's very hard to play poker, good guys. Like you're never going to be precise in every spot. So the equilibrium strategy more of a guidance than the actual Bible of poker. Like it's good to understand how the spots work in equilibrium, but then you can use that to identify mistakes. So yeah, he says he bets 2/3.
I also feel it's gonna be a little bit hard for me to bet rivers on this board because he's gonna expect me to have one pair so often that when I do bet, I might open up the door on a lot of bluffing.
So actually what he just said there is like incredibly important. So let's look at the sim so I can talk about what he just said. So what he's saying there, okay, we're just going to like, here's his pot bet. see the range is obviously like good top pair plus, generally two pair plus for value, and then a bunch of like backdoor draws that can like make straight draws, etc. Deuces, threes, fours, stuff that like on a lot of runouts going to be really bad. Mix of like ace x, but not very often. People probably pure check these kind of hands. But yeah, that might have some effect. It's not going to have a massive effect on your EV. Defending range, here's for the record. You can see like how like the the pairs that don't have the backdoor flushes just don't even like continue, and like the worst pairs that realize the equity the worst even just like start bluffing. Like even 7-5 is like apparently a minus EV call, but like it still defends because maybe your range loses EV. I don't know. It's probably like an error with the solve. It's not solved 100% accuracy. But yeah, so like we go into turn now. He said something about like expected to have like loads of one pair hands on the river, that if he were to bet the river again he could reopen the action. What that tells me is like he uses 2/3 on the turn as with his ace kings and ace queens, and maybe his ace nines and ace eights, and then he uses 150% on the turn with his like two pair plus, if you see what I'm saying, or like his good two pair plus. And if you look at the solve here, like if you were to give it 70, 150, you'd see like a lot of the range is like choosing 70, but the hands that go bigger, like it seems bluffing, like Queen 8 for example, really likes to go bigger, even though it's like higher EV to bluffs for a smaller size and in equilibrium. But the hands that go bigger, like other sets, these are the hands that like probably prefer the bigger size, like 7 and 9-8, like specifically. And like even King Queen is like mainly going smaller, but it might prefer to just palm money in because you have the nuts kind of thing. So what he's telling me is his ace queen kings and ace queens are gonna bet 70% here, maybe even do that pure. But you can see ace king is checking a decent amount, and then his like sets plus, except maybe aces, he probably might find a check with aces, or like the 70% with aces. A lot of people probably even just check this spot with aces even on the flop, which is like a mistake because there's very little checking done there. So yeah, his 70% range in reality is actually probably going to be like ace queens and ace kings, and maybe he finds like the 10-7s and like the he probably doesn't have Jack 7, but maybe he finds like the 10-7s and like the ace 10s potentially. But like I'm guessing like then his big bets are going to be like his 9-8s, his 7s, his 10s, his king queens, and like you can see like how that's different strategy to like this 2/3 size in here. Like there's a lot of king queens in this range, 10s and 7s like mixing a lot. So like he's telling me that on the turn he's going to have one pair a lot, which means he's expecting he could be bluffed a lot. You can see in the sim, like the range that he has to call with is very tight. Like he's already folded like 60% of his hands on the flop, and now he's folding 40% of his hands on the turn. So like from his that guy's opening range, like he's folded like 3/4 of his range already, and like what's left is like two pair plus and like the occasion like queen jack, king jack, and stuff like that. And this stuff is supposed to bluff raise, like the pair plus the gut shot plus the blocker to the two pair kind of stuff. And like if you're playing against a guy who's doing ace king ace queen, the exploit here is to actually like, okay, maybe you overcall the flop here, like obviously like something like the ace two pairs like pure raise in a sense, like pure raising, but like the exploit here is I generally would like only ever raise value in this spot, and yeah, I guess 10-7 ace 10 both make sense because like there's no way ace queen ace king ever fold. And also I'm using a 4x size in here. Like if you use a smaller bet size you might change your strategy a little bit. Like if you get to the turn with this jack here and you face this like just like pure raise anything that has two pair basically. So if you have like jack 7 of diamonds, like just raise this pure for value, because his value range is like ace king ace queen like 80% of the time. You know, if you have like ace 7, raise it for value, like because he's supposed to have the two pairs in the top sets and the mixing the sets and the king queens, but but he's telling me that he's going to bet 150 or 100% with those hands. And then you just fold anything that just doesn't have a pair plus a gut shot basically. And even then, maybe you could even start to overfold that. You wouldn't even bother like turning these hands into a bluff because like he's probably just not bluffing enough. And when he is bluffing, he's probably got the queen of diamonds or the queen of spades. So yeah, that's just how I would approach the spot exploitatively against Lex. And like this is probably quite key because it probably like is going to show me like loads of his thought process on the other streets. So let's have a look at this hand, or like in other hand spots. So yeah, he's doing like kind of like a 55-60% bet. What this tells me is he favors bigger sizes on more connected boards, or like more better boards for the like he's going to use like overbet versus when he's not advantage. And here, I mean, he is like here. There's actually equal number of nuts. In fact, slightly more for real Mitko 99 because he has like Jack 8 suited. I mean, Lex possibly could open that pure, but maybe not. I think it's mixed in theory. Like low percentage open, but like Jack 8 suited for sure. 8-5 suited. Did he 2.5x it? 8-5 is probably like theoretically like mixed too on this rake structure. Maybe a fold. But then there's pocket jacks, 5s, 8s, almost always calling. Lex has those hands too, a little less 2-pair. So he's favouring sizing up because he thinks aces, my aces, queens, kings, my ace jack, king jacks, and like maybe some like queen jack diamonds or like something like that. They just maybe even like my jack nines. They just always want to like size up, I guess, for value. I don't really know. Maybe he wouldn't do it with jack nines in these formations because he doesn't call as much jack x. Like he doesn't like have jack 6 here. So that's basically his value range. And then like he's just gonna like bluff. He's gonna have loads of these like ace kings, ace queens with backdoors, I guess. So he's gonna probably build this strategy around like the backdoor flush elements. That kind of like changes his strategy a little bit too when it comes to like calling, because it just means like I could probably overfold the flop again. Same thing if I'm sat here with 5-3 of hearts, I'm probably starting to think about folding that hand in this formation on this board, and then but if you're sat there with like 9-7 clubs or something, like you start thinking about calling. But the other problem is like when you use this strategy and you just have so many of these type of hands or like gut shots, is like if people raise you, like you tend to just call more. Like say real Mitko raises to 18 with his like jack 8 of a hearts or something. Like there's no way Lex is gonna fold this hand. But like if his range is just too much of this, and there's no way he's gonna fold 10-9. There's no way he's gonna fold Queen 9. So if his range is just too much of that, like he's just never gonna fold to a raise. Like when you have a value hand, you just like really go after it. And if you have a hand that really wants to realize its equity and do better by raising, you just go after it. And it's like, how can Lex like 3-bet here in position versus a raise? Maybe he could have a 3-bet range, but then it just becomes very simple. You just pile the money in with like your 2-pair plus, and you combo draws, and like maybe you're like your best flush draws, and then you just fold like your more speculative hands, like your 9-7s of clubs and stuff. So I probably would just like lean towards like calling a little bit more with draws as an exploit, and just value raise and expecting to be like overcalled. I mean, they are also 200 big blinds deep. That could also affect the strategy here. It doesn't affect pre-flop because there's a bunch of people 100 bigs deep, but like maybe post-flop, like you'd expect like maybe his size is bigger because of how deep he is, but he hasn't said anything about that.
Yeah, raise pre-flop and a bet the flop. He's trying to get rid of ace highs. I get called though over here. He's gonna catch it
Yeah,
down.
this one,
He's gonna get out the way now.
this based on the size, what it would have gone 5 because it looks like he's 215x in. It's like, what is it, $12 pot on the flop, and then there's 27 in there. So what is he bet on the flop into a 12, like 6 half pot? Probably like 2/3. So he's probably 2/3 the flop here. This is probably a recreational on the button. So like using this 2/3 size on this 10-7-6 board, cold call recreational. Now I don't have a HUD. This could be a VPIP 60 guy. It could be a VPIP 30 guy. The difference between that is this kind of guy, VPIP 30 guy, is probably gonna like not have the queen deuce suited and like just the crap, you know. But they will probably be too passive, so then they start coggling button hands that can free bet profitably, like the ace jack offsuits, the king queen offsuits, and so the problem with, to me, like it depends on the player. Like with a 2/3 sizing is one, their range is kind of connecting with this board quite a decent amount. Two, the only hands that you're realistically going to make fold to this bet are going to be like the ace deuces to the ace fours, maybe even like the ace fives. But like even those suited hands with the backdoor flushes might just call anyway. Like the ace jacks and stuff, the hands that are better probably just call the flop because they overcards and ace high. So you're never going to make a 10, a 9, an 8, a 7, or a 6 fold. You're probably not going to make like 2 overs fold. And there's like a bunch of like queen jack suited and stuff like that. There's just a lot of hands just connect well with this like balls, so like 2/3 here, and then try and pick up equity to realize your equity when you just have like hand like this. I'd much rather check pot control if he wants to put money into the pot. You know, if it's if it's a large amount of money, we get out of there. If it's a small, maybe we can attack that, expecting him to like bet big with like stronger hands, or maybe we can just check fold and just get out of the way. Maybe we can just call and like see a turn that way. The point is you don't like build a pot here. Like we've got a 14 big blind pot here with king jack suited on 10-7-6-5. It's like it's a disaster really. I'd rather check, expect him to check back ace high, and then delay c-bet, attack the turn versus the capped range or the one pair range, and then attack the river, because that range is probably not going to be very strong. Like you're probably going to get like more folds than you need to make auto profit, even if it's just by 5 to 10% of his range. And I've been doing that for years, and it's worked really, really well. It's super profitable against recreationals. I don't like to build big pots with weak hands on bad boards, and that's to me is kind of key. He's trying to like fold specific hand type out, but he's piling a lot of money in, where he could just check, delay c-bet, attack the capped range, keep the pot small, get out of there if it gets too big for his hand. Just basic poker.
Cash games are cool though. It's like I said earlier. It's like you just have to be very aware of the fact that the beauty of cash games isn't in the single raise pots. It's when you 3-bet people. That's when cash games get super interesting.
Yeah, I kind of
But I
see what
actually
he's
think
saying,
that
but I really love the small pots.
the disrupt between cash game, the way people think cash games are played and the way they're actually played, that difference, that gap is way bigger than in tournaments, I think.
That's actually probably true.
But it's so hard to keep shutting these tournament ranges in my head off.
This hand's
No
relatively
reason to
normal.
bet. If I'm betting here, then I would be bluffing with my hand because I'm not going to get value from worse.
Yeah, I mean at the turn, I think you can check the turn, but like a small bet is probably better. Like half pot, I guess, is okay. Like you just get caught by like so many like gut shots and like stuff, and like you can get caught by like fives. There's not too much 4x 3x in the range generally, but there will be a little bit. But like you probably yeah, I'd much prefer a small bet. He did go half pot, so it's not a huge technical difference. There's no point in value betting the river. Like you're just gonna get called by better really. Never gonna get called by worse unless you like bet one big blind. Then you end up getting raised sometimes. And like if you get like a one big blind bet, like and you're sat here with like I don't know queen 9 or something, or like 9-8, you probably just value raise that on the river.
My hand can win at showdown.
I'd like him to
Very
show
important
what
to
that guy
consider
had.
as well. We want to bluff with our worst hands and we want to value bet with our best hands. And you might think, wow, that is so normal. Why are you even saying that? But you will see so often that people will turn on a board of like Jack 10, 5, 6. They will turn a pair of tens into a bluff, and it's just like, what are you doing? You know, that's the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be bluffing with hands that can't win. Value bet with hands that win the most. Value bet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess he means in specific spots. That's true, but like turning pairs into bluffs in certain spots, like depends on the ranges. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but like a lot of regulars like recognize spots where like their top pair or their second pair is just no good, and but they understand that like they can make better hands from the value range fold. Um, Especially and like the second pairs and the foot become like good blockers in a lot of spots. So like if in certain spots and nodes, those are like the best bluffs. In other nodes, they're obviously just showdown value or bluff catchers, and you should just like call them. But like my general rule of thumb is if I get into a spot with a bluff catcher, um, if I get into a spot with like a pair, like top of my like a bluff catching range, and I decide this guy's under bluffing in this spot, but I can maybe make some of his value range fold, I would probably just bluff that hand, like a second pair hand. So that's actually quite an advanced play he's talking about, and it does print money in cash games, like long term.
The most with hands that win the most.
Like he's talking about turning your worst hand into bluffs. I guess he's talking about like maybe is he talking about polarized strategies, or is he just talking about like you just have no showdown value on the river, like you've in the villain's checked and like you should just attack that and then
We see this time and time again.
like he's done passive actions, but like he's talking about seeing it, but it just depends on the line. Realistically, certain lines is good, other lines it isn't. Get cold
I have
cool.
so much respect for people who can play cash games in tournaments.
Yeah, I'd have respect for that too because I can't really play tournaments. I'm trying to learn for Scoop. So here,
At the same time, and this is gonna happen a lot. I actually think that if I want to 4-bet here, I really need two cards that can make a straight. So ace 10 or ace jack suited, even a hand like king 9 suited, I think would be better than this card.
I actually kind of get what he's saying there because like that's definitely true in like this kind of spot. However, if you're really deep, um, it does make sense to like have a this kind of hand in your bluffing range, but it's kind of a interesting spot because he's squeezed. It's possible this guy's out of line with his squeezing range here, but he's also on the button, so he can cold call a lot of hands. But like the beauty of ace 9 is obviously apart from blocking aces, is he also block nines, which would probably like, I mean nines would probably also just really like to cold call, to be honest in this spot, but like you could probably just four bet this is a bluff, but you're like when you're deep, if you're like thinking about this 600 big blind guy, if it's a heads up pot, sorry, this 300 big blind guy and you 200, you probably like you'd want to go like $65-$70. However, there is a player with just like the 120 big blinds here, so there's really no point in like getting fancy in this spot. You should just muck your hand realistically, out of position to two people. I like ace 10 suited, ace jack suited could make good 4-bet bluffs for sure. Probably better to play them as 4-bet, especially ace 10 suited. Probably way better to just 4-bet bluff in that spot than to cold call out of position, even with a recreational with a weak range. So yeah, I do agree with him. Like if you were heads up though, 200 big blinds, 250 big blinds deep, I wouldn't mind 4-betting this hand. I probably would just fold for safety, but I think there's a lot of edge deep stacked against 100 big blind players who don't play a lot of deep, because they don't 100% know the ranges. And to be honest, when I look at deep stack ranges, I just don't really look at under the gun versus button because there's no real way to solve it because there's a bunch of 100 BB players on your table too. So the solved ranges are always just incorrect to reality anyway. So the only time I look at deep stack ranges are in late position spots where there's a good chance that will happen more often. So I actually have a strategy blind v blind when 200 big blinds deep. That's different to my 100 big blind poker strategy.
I'm not gonna 4-bet there. I also don't want to call because it's gonna be 3-way and my hand's gonna dog shit. For that. Also really good
Okay,
player.
so we have Yeah, he's like identifying their eggs. Like this guy's a reg. He obviously you saw Big Steeler, who's like a reg. So like this board here, generally you wouldn't want to do too many small bets in this board. This actually favors big blind more because big blind has like the 5-3s. You shouldn't open 5-3 suited. Big blind has 5-3 suited pure. Big blind has 4 deuce suited. Ace 4 offsuits. Well, maybe not deuce offsuits, but like I mean both players can have that. Deuces and fours. The only thing Nick Butt has going for him is like he has like the ace tens way more than like the nuts. So like it's not a board you like 100% check, but like put into perspective, OOP could even have a leading range here, because he just has like more nutted hands like in general. If I were to bring up a solver, it would show you that. Whenever there's a spot where someone can have a leading range, you probably don't want to do too much small betting. I get that you'd want to attack like a hand like Jack 7 that just has to fold, but I think like maybe you'd want to like not range bet. You could probably have a small betting strategy, but you wouldn't want to range bet. You'd want to like you know have a lot of checks. So like, if he's range betting this pot Nick Bud is like a mistake. If I bring up the solve here, I'll show you like exactly what I'm talking about. If you look at OAP, there's even a 15% leading range here because of the 5 resuit advantage. Obviously, he doesn't have to fold very much, but imagine if this guy starts folding like King 6 of spades here, or Jack 10 of spades, or like stuff like that. If he starts folding these kind of hands, you can see like even the 10-6 of spades are different. If some of these hands start folding, leading just starts becoming better. Or if he just starts raising too much, because like, there's a little bit of raising with ace queen. If he just starts raising like ace queen, like almost pure, then suddenly the EV of like 5-3 suit is just massively jumping up. I put a little bit of 5-3 in this range, by the way, because I do see some people open the button with 5-3 suited. In equilibrium, it's technically a mistake. But like if there was no 5-3, this leading range would increase, and then this betting range is these 40% bets. So you kind of like, if you want to have a betting range, but you don't want to range bet the spot. If we were to just like redo and just like, let's just force imposition player to just range bet. So let's redo the sim. But like we want to force imposition to range bet and force an OP check. It'll take a minute or two so we can talk about some other hands. But yeah, you'll see like an interesting strategy from out of position. Yeah, obviously this hand actually could probably mix raising. It could lead. It could call is like probably the safer play.
Again, I don't really see what we're value betting against. If we have 9s here, then our opponent can have 8s, 7s, and 6s. But when we have 6s, the reverse is true.
Yeah, I get what you talk about, like going for thin value. Like there is like stuff like 5-4s, like stuff that I'm going to show down here. Generally, you'd want to like check here a lot. I think like you probably want to have like a few different sides. Like you have a lot of a6 in range, and like he checks the turn, doesn't have as much a6, but can have some. So like I wouldn't say you want to overbet here. You probably want to like have a 2/3 sizing, and then maybe if you make a jack, you could perhaps have a block sizing. And like maybe if you have like a hand like 8s, 9s probably should just free bet pure. 8s maybe like starts to mix. Like there's potential to get value from 7s, 6s, like 4s. But like remember this thing I told you about like raising with pairs, in position. Like if I'm sat here with pocket 5s or like a 4 of some kind, and someone like value bet small, there's a good chance I'm gonna bluff raise that hand. Because like if you start value betting like 8s here, and like good players are gonna like attack the hell out of you, because good players know versus a block they could raise a good jack potentially, but like definitely will check like ace 7 on the turn. So like yeah, you talk about like seeing people turn pairs into bluffs, but like this is an exact example of a spot where if he starts to be like, I'm gonna start betting 30% with my eights here, they get called by like five, sixes, sevens, 4x. They might find that some of the hands they're trying to make cool are actually gonna bluff him off of his hand. Where if you just check those hands, this guy probably takes showdown value. So like you have to be very careful when he spots against good players. Like if you play very, very face up here, you're gonna get like wrecked.
Just gonna fold this.
Obviously, he took his
Offsuit, we
showdown.
play relatively tight from the small blind. I mean, the fact that we only play 9x and higher, right? Like king 9, queen 9, jack 9 from the small blind is already quite crazy. Crazy adjustment. I mean, a lot of these things I'm saying from the mind of a tournament player, but first of all, that's what I am. Second of all, I actually think that
So look at this, the 5-3 suited raise. Like, yeah. I already said like you probably shouldn't raise this on the button. Like in theory, I think in reality it's actually not the worst thing to do. Because of people under free bet the big blind, and against a recreational player I would always raise this hand. Because like even if you had like a good reg in the small blind, like the rec's just gonna make up in EV based on his inferior strategy. So what a reg can do if you open these kind of hands, a reg can free bet you more, cold call more, and like really punish you for having 5-3. But if this guy plays free bet or fold, this is a really good hand to open. But if this guy like recognizes there's I'm not saying this guy's a fish by the way, but if he recognizes there is a fish in the blind, and he you know he's like hands like king 5 suited, he could start cold calling those hands, and then suddenly this is just a really bad open. But if he just folds those hands, this becomes a much higher EV open because you just get heads up. So like this probably is a good open, like based on how the ball plays, but in an equilibrium setting where people are free betting properly, they're good players that can beat you in tough spots, and you don't get to realize as much equity. This is just like not a good open in the rake structure. So I'm not saying it's a bad open. I'm just saying like I think you really have to select who you're playing against. This solve just ended, so like we're gonna just look at like how the range bet strategy can be punished. There's 22% raise, and you can see like you can see there's barely any folding on this board. You think like, wow, betting 1/3 c bet on like ace 4 deuce, and like I have a range advantage, and like I can make him fold like 30% of the time. But it's not true on this board. And then if someone's raising you 22% of the time, these hands that really want to check, king 9 of spades for example, just become disastrous. Like just horrific. Yeah, and if we compare this to this, sorry, this is the other sim. If we compare this to this one, the original sim where it's just a 33% bet, but it's balanced. Like you see, there's a 35%, 8% raise, and so like all of these like speculative hands, the 5x, the 3x, it's like backdoor hearts. It just becomes so much better, like the queen jacks, the queen tens, backdoor hearts, straights, the 3x. All of these hands are just like so much better to raise. Like even like queen 6 of spades, which has like backdoor, flush and straight potential. Like, it just starts to perform so much better because you're just making like hands that really want to check and see a turn, like queen jack of diamonds, just fold and like punish them for putting money into the pot. So like you've really got to be careful on those boards. Just for the record, pocket sixes in a normal sim, some raising with a heart. Oh no, sorry, this is a new sim. Some raising with a heart you could do in a normal sim. I imagine it's just a pure call. Yeah, you really have to be careful about range betting these boards. I generally don't range bet these boards. I like mostly check.
most of you guys approach cash games as tournaments as well, with similar ranges, similar bet sizings, lots of small bets, lots of limping, min raising. Just vastly different.
I mean, min raising is like definitely more of a modern thing.
Gonna have to be a re-raise.
It's a good free bet, good sizing.
Right, pretty good.
In an equilibrium setting, like, because you have like a bunch, like king jack 6, because you have like a bunch of like weaker hands on this board. If you're free betting like more polar strategy from the free run, like you've got like Because like you could have just like a bunch of like Jack 7, Jack 8 offsuits. Um, you probably don't want to range bet this board. And like 10-9 spades is probably a hand that would favour checking more, if I'm guessing. But like generally you could get away with range betting against like a pool because the pool isn't as aggressive as they should be out of position in 3-bet pots. At least some of the players on some of the boards. So like
It's
this
gonna bet.
this isn't an auto bet spot, and I'm not really sure if I like the big size. That being said, like tens is a pure value for 4-bet, and nines can even mix in 4-bet. So like blocking them isn't like a bad thing here because they're like maybe not in the range as much. Like you want nines with hearts, like you want nines to just fold, but like you would normally just block the folds if this was like a I don't know, like an early, but you wouldn't free bet this anyway against early position. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not a huge fan of this size. I'd much rather just bet small here in position, especially on King Jack 6. Because like, if you start building big pots with weak hands with no equity, when you start to get called, yeah, basically you just have nothing. You literally, like, even the bottom of his range is just like, you have almost nothing against it. So I don't really like the size here. It might be okay.
Those 66%.
Like this is the thing I talked about. He likes to bet big, and we're noticing this. So he does have a checking range here. This hand maybe not the best, but like it maybe tells me his checking range. His checking range is probably like capped to like more showdown value, and like his betting range here does still have like bad hands in it, which is good to know.
And over on the other table, also re-raising. I actually think that this is a good hand to re-raise. Hands like 10-4, 9-4 suited. Pretty good. Some suited cards as bluffs. Big blind to small blind.
I mean, I wouldn't like
Over here,
100% disagree with that, especially when you're deep stacked. You probably want to have a few more of those type of hands. It's actually a good hand, and he sizes up a bit. You don't have to size up to like. Actually, no, it's a good size. I think that's a well played hand.
I cannot call a check raise, and I do think that this board is so draw heavy that if my opponents decide to do something, it will be by check raising.
So
I would definitely be
he chooses to realize
balanced
equity.
there. Say that means that my turn check does not mean that I'm necessarily weak. So I could still check a hand like King 9 or King 10 or some King Queen even. Even a hand like Ace Jack's pretty strong, right? That I could value bet on the river. So, I mean, obviously I don't have any raising hands. So I'm just gonna.
So this size by villain, I'm not sure if there's a recreational player, but like the 1/3 after like the big flop check, the 1/3 size to me doesn't feel right, but I could be wrong. I feel like I want to bet bigger if I have a value hand here, and like maybe you could just like 1/3 some weak King X potentially. But like I mean like you just end up with a crap hand here, and the pot's 32 big blinds. Like I just don't like the idea of like if you're gonna play big bets. I just don't like the idea of piling in money with crap hands, and then like you pick up some equity on the turn, even though it's not much because it's a double flush draw board. Like you pick up some equity and then you just don't like do anything about it. Like I just don't really like how this hand is played. Like just it's the same with the King Jack one. It's just piling money in with crap hands. Like trying to make him fold. Like I guess his idea is he wants to make him fold like something like Ace 8 of diamonds or something. I guess his plan is, but like you just make those hands fold on the turn, or you can just bet small and make those hands fold. Like to me, it just doesn't make sense.
Fold. But I would have definitely attempted a bluff, especially with all the flush draws missing. What a game!
Then yeah, against the small size, and you definitely can probably value bet like any king that you check on the turn. So like a 3x raise, but like it maybe the recreational is just like got like too many like King 8s and King 10s and uses a small when realistically he can size up in that spot to at least 2/3 and maybe even have an overbet strategy with like his nutted hands that don't raise the flop. So like it's another spot you could actually like even just bluff, like or just like rep that you trapped a set in my opinion. It's just one of those, like, is another really good bluffing spot. Like, and also if the recreational is just bluffing too much with like weak misdraws and stuff, then you just get to, again, you just get to like make him fold those hands when you have 10 high.
What a game! What a game!
These are like the exploits. This is an easy fold,
Almost just
obviously.
only showing this hand just to show that you folded from
At least
small blind. I mean, you
he
can
knows
raise it
this.
small blind to big blind, of course, but yeah, that's gonna be a raise or a call, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with him. Raise or call. I think I've leaned towards raising this hand, but like this is also probably a recreational player, judging by what he's tagged already. Although I'm not sure if they are correct tags. So like a recreational player, I generally would prefer to free bet more linear and have more of a like just have more of the good stuff rather than use a polar strategy. I don't think the polar is going to work as good against the rec. Like just more of a linear strategy where you just give me the good stuff basically for value and cool. Like this kind of hands, it's obviously a highly exploitable strategy. You can be just like owned by people, just like people could just like open raise like 80% of their range, and then when you free bet them, just like overfold profitably and just. But like that being said, against the fish is good because they're just not going to adjust to you. They're just going to overcall, and you're just going to win big pots. I'm not a fan of this C bet, but it's okay against the fish because you just get to get value straight away basically. But the thing I don't like about, I mean, it does help you realize your equity, but like the thing I don't like about the C bet versus a fish is like the amount that you will get bluffed, and your hand is like really bad to call because like if you get check raised a lot. And you bet small and a fish just sits there with a 10 or a 6, or like sometimes they'll even just spew raise you with like really bad hands. Like you don't really want to call king 7 versus a large raise, because it's just very bad playability in a lot of spots. So like it's definitely a hand I'd much prefer to check if I expect them to attack the check raise, and recreationals do attack small bets quite a lot. On some boards they don't, but certain boards they do. This probably is one of them. They attack. I don't think it's a terrible strategy.
Into a bluff again. You see, I don't want to turn a 9 into a bluff here, but a 7 doesn't beat an 8 and a 9, and 9 beats an 8 and a 7. So, which hand's more suited for bluffing? A 7 as opposed to a 9. This is true for tournaments as well. It's very important to keep that in mind.
So I'm not sure about this bluff because it could technically work because. Like when you start betting this spot, you're repping basically straights and sets only, and like, but like the problem with the 7 is like, because it's a fish, like a fish will just call you with like 7-4, so you actually have removal some of the hands that he folds. I mean, you do remove some hands that he calls, like Jack 7. Like a fish is gonna have 7-6, 7-5s and stuff like, but like. What kind of hands you really want him to fold? You want him to fold king spades, floats and just random stuff like that. And like this, it's just such a connected board. Like, yeah, I'm just not really a fan of this bluff. I mean, I guess if you're trying to take a balanced line here, it would make sense to like bluff something like this, but you'd probably much rather have a queen. Potentially.
I am going to bet here on the river. I think that if he has a jack, they're very likely to continuation bet as a bluff, or that they're going to check raise the flop as a semi-bluff. So.
Oh yeah, I kind of see what he's saying now because I forgot that he checked to him, so he took a small stab and then he bets the turn. So I actually do kind of like. Now that I think about that, and again, it's not the worst spot in the world to actually bluff, and plus he probably raises the turn a decent amount of a jack. Of course, it doesn't mean that you can't have good hands here. It's actually a good spot to bluff quite wide. I'm not sure I would triple barrel such a low equity hand though. I'd probably rather pot control this hand and not pile a bunch of money in. But like since Woodsy hasn't check raised the flop, nor has he like c-bet the flop, nor has he uh, raised the turn. Yeah, he probably doesn't have that many straights here. So I like this is actually probably a decent bet. I'm just not sure about the flop or the turn, to be honest, if this is the best strategy. But like, I like the river bluff for sure. Hopefully this guy has two pair and just lets it go. But although it's hard sometimes to make a fish fold two pair. But I do think it's a good bluff. But I wouldn't do the turn or the flop the same.
So again,
it's the same thing. It's like he's made the pot 20 big blinds with a 7 against the recreational, but just play normal against the recreational, but just pot control. Like you have a good hand, pile money, and if you don't, only put the money in good spots. You know, because he's built like he Woodsy could have easily had a straight there or a two pair, like very easily, and like the river might not have come out. You know, if he pairs the river in those spots, like other hands come, like he might not get Woodsy to fold as much. So like it's again, he's piling like 40 big blinds in when he doesn't have to.
To think about where ranges come from. Here it's folds. We don't call from the small blinds ever.
I actually wouldn't open this hand, and the reason I wouldn't open it is I think this is an overrated hand. Like in theory, if you get a free bet by imposition, you generally this would go into the quarter range. And the second reason is, I mean, and if you're in a lot of regs, you will get free bet a lot. The second reason is like this isn't going to play very well multi-way out position as you think it is. And these hands are just kind of there, so you know, for board coverage, so that you don't have to fold certain boards as much. It might make more EV, but like people just don't play as aggressively as you think they do in certain spots. So. Like, do you really need a hand this bad, like from under the gun? And the third reason is like, unless it's like multiple fish on the table, I wouldn't. With Woodsy in the big blind, I don't think it's as bad. If he's like actual recreational player, I don't really know him, but this is his recreational tag. I just wouldn't pick this hand very often. Like it's pretty hard to make profitable. Only if there's like multiple fish on the table with implied odds. Realistically, is it going to be like super profitable? And like you could just lose EV here if you can't steal the blinds as much as you think you can, and if you get free bet a lot. Because you're not when you open this kind of hand, you're not going to see a flop like a third of the time. You're not even going to you're going to get free bet, and you're only going to steal like you're probably only going to steal like 1/3 of the time. So like, it's very hard to make this profitable unless you can get into the situation where your heads up versus a fish.
Hands like 5s, 4s, 6s, 7, 8, 7, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5 suited. These are not 100% opens.
At least he knows that.
Very important to remember that. If you open this hand 100% from under the gun, you're gonna get smashed. The nice thing is though, when you do, I mean, it's really important to just like be aware of ranges and look them up, and know that what those frequencies look like. The nice thing is when you do open them, you always get the call re-raises, so that's pretty class.
I mean, that is definitely true, but like, if you get free bet by these positions, you might have to call in theory, but in my opinion, just like minus EV calls, because like, I mean, look at it yourself. Like, if you've played 1,000 hands at these and ran like average in that sample, I bet you like not making money with these hands. Yeah, I mean here. You can do both, raise or call. Like if you raise, obviously just get it in. Like the thing is, like you don't have a lot of like super nutted hands here, but like if you sat here with like queens or jacks, you probably want to like raise them for some value. Maybe I think more queens than jacks. I think like jacks. Like, because with queens you dominate jacks, which might sometimes free bet, although jacks should actually also call this like most of the time too. But like you also want to punish him for like if this guy does c bet way too much with like Broadway over cards. You want to punish that. So like you could raise here for like maybe 3x, and then you make this guy fold like his ace queen offsuits and stuff. So I think raising is a good play. Calling is also a good play.
Amazing board for me.
Pretty good turn. Once you've called the turn, there's not really much to do here. This is also like half pot, half pot. It's kind of a sus line. The problem is, which is being so passive, is a fish will like way over bluff here on the river. So like the problem with like taking a more passive line is like you might not actually get to bluff the river as much as you think, because the fish might not give up. Like he might just like triple off like ace king when you could take some showdown value with those hands. But I mean, it's still super easy call on a turn.
And we're gonna 4-bet over in this table.
This is a good 4-bet. This is the last hand I'm going to talk about.
Call here.
Obviously you get an insane price. Yeah, I think like you could maybe bluff jam to like try and make him fold like some ace highs, ace queens and stuff, but like much more better to call, and then if he checks you just blast your hand.
I don't think that's it, but yeah, this will be a bluff for us. We have the worst hand imaginable. In this instance it doesn't really matter that we have spades, because they're never going to have one of these spades, and it's a backdoor flush draw, so it's
That's actually not true, because okay, Widzy might actually be a recreational and he might not have those hands, but actually theoretically you're supposed to 3-bet polarized from the big blind in this spot. So like your 3-bet range, he used a 12 big blind size, and your 3-bet range is supposed to have like some stuff, like even just like some like random jack king sevens or stuff like that, of spades and just stuff like this, and some random unsuited connectors. So actually these actually do have bad blockers in the spot. However, it wouldn't stop me from bluffing here, because if he checks and you just bet like here, he's supposed to hero some ace high in this spot, and people just don't do that. They just fold too much in these spots. So like it's just a massively profitable spot, even if like you block some of the give ups. Like people just fold way more than that's even important. So like he's definitely right, but like his like accurate measuring of the ranges here is wrong from a theoretical point of view. Maybe Widzy though just is like super like linear, and it's just like 3-betting this 4% or 3% with top 3%. It's just like ace queen and queens plus, like maybe, and that's maybe his strategy. Maybe he doesn't mix in like those small percentage bluffs, and then that's completely fine. His range is like very clearly defined when he checks. It's like ace high, he probably overfolds them, so it's super profitable.
Less harmful to bluff with those. But with the ace queen, they called our 79.
Okay, there's a really good turn card. Obviously, apart from the fact that he has ace queen, like this range here is going to be button range is going to be kind of defined. It's supposed to be like some percentage of suited connectors. So like he will connect with like 5 6s, 7 6s, 8 7s, and then it's just going to be like some like 8 7s, 9s, maybe 6s, probably not 5s, and then it's going to be like some of the like good suited Broadway stuff, maybe ace queen offsuit, maybe. So like it's interesting, but like in a 4-bet pot you can't really go wrong with betting small all the time. It's probably a board you wouldn't want to like always bet in theory, but like betting small in practice was still going to work quite well. And you'd be surprised how aggressive in position is supposed to be here. Like if he's sat there with 7 6 8 7, he's meant to raise quite a lot, and obviously like jacks, maybe if he doesn't pure shove jacks or queens, like those hands just always want to like start value raising, because this cold 4-bet range is supposed to be kind of like jacks plus, and then just like your good stuff, your king queens, your ace jacks, your ace queen offsuits. I think some of the bluffs are like meant to be more from like king 10s than king jacks, but like they could be in there too. I even just like show a sim, pop it up on the screen. So like here, kind of ranges I would expect. These aren't solved ranges, they're sort of ranges that would be normal from OP. You see like mixed a lot. It's like you can't go too wrong with just betting here, but like look at this 25% raises from in position. Like you're talking about ace fives, like you're raising it and you'd get that in. If you were to like click this one back and like he rips it, you have to call like any pair here and you just start folding like your suited stuff. Even ace queen with a backdoor flush draw is supposed to call. So like, but that's because out of position's supposed to rip some of these ace kings and stuff. And like it's kind of crazy, isn't it? But like even though out of position's like ripping in like jacks, queens, you know, and ace king, like you still would call with like ace queen, even though it's like barely making any money, because like you just have the raw equity to run with your hand a lot of the time, plus some blockers. And so it's kind of crazy like how aggressive in position is meant to be. I think the pool isn't as aggressive here as they should be, and that's obviously a mistake they make, especially because you could probably just range bet this and then like you could just get to raise way more with pairs and just like absolutely mess up. Yeah, but yeah, anyway, I like the turn size in here.
And over here we're gonna bluff now because we have the worst hand possible.
Yes, as I
This is the worst
explained.
hand that we could possibly have on this board, which means it's an excellent bluff.
I'll explain. It is a good bluff.
Nice.
And good bluff.
Call. Chop it up.
Yeah, the ace queen. I mean, you actually see that villain's supposed to fold these ace queens on the flop too. It's like we talked about people like not raise enough here, but they certainly are apparently calling too much. Like he probably just calls everything. Like probably just all the king queen suited backdoors. Maybe he just folds like his ace jack diamonds and so like he's calling ace queen. And like yeah. So I guess the 1/3 bet is probably quite good. Like on the queen of spades, like you see it's a pure range bet, but like he's also like supposed to call and not like have a jamming range here. But it's probably also quite good. Like you just like these hands are like kind of fucked, and like all these floats. If he has way more of these floats, he's kind of fucked. But like if he has like ace queen pure here, maybe it's not as good as you think. But yeah. I mean, it's super standard though. By Lex, this is a mistake
Right, so
by him.
this bluff was really nice. It's so important to recognize that, right? You have to bluff with your worst hands. That, if you look at my whole range, right, that was the very worst hand that I open under the gun that doesn't make a pair. So that's just the one you're gonna have to use, because the most efficient way to bluff is to bluff with a hand that doesn't beat anything when you check.
That's true. However, there are also some spots. This isn't a spot. There are also some spots where he could check to you, and like you've been piling money in, and like, or like you could check to you, and you're betting 760, 2/3 of the pot here, to make a pure, to make money. The break-even percentage here is what, 42%. There are spots where people will check and they will call regardless of what hand you have. They're going to overcall. So even if you have the worst hand in your range, and like, but you know, and you're bluffing a size where you need 40% of their hands, their range to fold, just to start making money. And say you just say you don't even have like blockers. Your blockers don't matter. Just say your blockers don't matter. If you're in a spot where you're like, they're just going to call 30%, like 70% of their range, there's just no point in bluffing. And there are some spots like that in poker where, through study of data and like experience of analysis, people just overcall way too much, and that just completely changes my strategy. So I start to fold more combos on the flop that recoup their EV by bluffing on later streets. This isn't one of those hands or spots, but like his logic of like saying, when I have the worst hand, you should always bluff, isn't entirely correct. It makes sense in equilibrium, but isn't entirely correct in all the spots in poker. And like when you become a more experienced and better player, you start to recognize spots where people are just like naturally, just by how they construct their ranges, they're just never folding. Like you could have a profitable flop and turn bet, but then you should just give up the river every time because they're not going to fold. And like you see Charlie Carroll do it, and that guy's like mental. And I'll do the same thing and have a massive red line. Yeah, I'm not going to look at any more hands because the video's gone on for like an hour. But I just like tearing his game apart. Overall, what Lex basically his thought process is bluff with terrible hands that they can't win a showdown, and then just like keep your pairs as like bluff catchers or like don't turn them into bluffs. And like it's kind of an old way of thinking about the game. Like it's not an advanced way of thinking about the game. But like his general like obviously he understands the ranges, he understands the sizings you could bet. He's very obviously he has some knowledge of theory. He's not 100% like sure of like what sizings mean, like what a 12 big blind raise means versus a 10 big blind raise or 11 big blind raise. Is he adjusting to recreationals properly? I don't know. So like strengths and weaknesses with Lex's play. Is he good enough to beat this pool? Yeah, I think he is. Is he going to be like a crush in the pool? No, because he's not like looking for like those spots. But the thing that is going to be really good with how he is generally playing is, I think that's going to be the thing that's going to make him really good is like the regs are going to have a harder time. I think adjusting to him than like if he was like a massive redliner, because against a redliner the regs kind of can adjust to that a lot better. But like if you're adjusting to like his strategies, like I've watched him play for 7 minutes and I know that when he bets big he has a certain type of hand, so I know, and he's probably gonna like be unbalanced in those nodes, so I can adjust my strategy versus his. Certainly of like how I raise to generate more EV, and like then when he ever like takes a smaller bet size in those nodes, I just go fucking mental against those smaller sizes. If he ever like forgets that like he played king queen king jack 4 in his spot as a big bet and he starts small betting, then you know that's my spot to like attack. But it's obviously very dependent. So Lex, good player. Likely not, I wouldn't say he's a crusher. He's definitely missing the edge in these games. But he understands like how it's basic strategy, which makes him like a decent player. Anyway, that's enough for me. I hope everyone has a good day. I'm gonna go call it.